G20 summit brings together these leaders of the world's largest economies, and this time it took place in Bali, Indonesia. India has been actively involved, but this time not just as a participant anymore, but as a world leader. So in this episode of Homeland this time, I decode how India's G20 presidency for 2023 can be an opportunity for our country to share expertise with the world in the areas of democracy and digital technology, and importantly, show itself as a stable nation that contributes now to the new global order. When did the G20 summit begin? It was in December 1999. Finance ministers and central bank governors of advanced and emerging countries first met in Berlin, Germany, for global economic stability. India also hosted a meeting of finance ministers and bank governors in 2002. By 2008, this G20 was then raised to a summit level, which means specifically during the economic crisis for the top leadership. So what are the G20 nations now? To secure a global financial stability by involving middle-income countries, the G20 countries include 60% of world's population, 80% of global GDP and 75% of global trade. So the prominent members are Australia, Brazil, China, France, Germany, India, Japan, Republic of Korea, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, the UK, US and the European Union. Spain is also invited as a permanent guest. But India has been gaining prominence every year as a country that now contributes and is not just seeking aid, and is fully capable of offering international aid as and when required. So there is this presidency that rotates every year, meaning there is a troika, previous, current and the next holder. India is now in that troika with Italy and Indonesia, because we will be now holding the presidency from 1st of December to 2023 November. And also going vocal for local, going global, Prime Minister Modi will be gifting Kullu shawls, canal brass for the world leaders at this G20 summit. But it was India's statement that caught everyone's attention this time, amid three big issues that afflict the world right now: climate change, COVID pandemic, Ukraine-Russia war, and the emerging consequences of global crisis in fuel and inflation. But here's what India said in its well-scripted, crisp and clear, directly hitting main points. India exposed the failure of institutions like the United Nations, which has proven to be ineffective this time to provide even essential goods, especially to poor citizens across the world in the past 2 years. India reiterated that it ensured food security for its own citizens, especially while the European world and the United States of America was facing inflation, recession and job losses. India also supplied food grains to other countries that are in need. Prime Minister Modi, in fact, interestingly, alerted the world to a fertilizer shortage that's looming that could be tomorrow's food crisis, for which if the world will not be able to have a solution if the supply chain is not ensured in time already. Remember, India is not fully dependent on fertilizers. Why? Because we've been promoting natural farming for sustainable food security since years now. We are repopularizing nutritious, traditional food grains and going back to our ancient culture of growing food for our people. Millet or bajra is popular in India since decades now, and it can actually become a solution to global malnutrition and hunger. India, remember, is also the fastest growing economy. Its energy security is important for global growth. So while most nations, specifically even in the Western world, depend largely on restricted energy sources, and that during climate change era, India has been aggressively promoting renewable sources. But it will be the affordable availability that could be our next big technology of a safe modern world and climate change time. India, remember, has now gone up. India, remember, has led with its vaccine international aid to other countries, leading by example that despite our own massive population across India, we managed to survive with our scientists leading from the front and providing vaccines just in time. What does that mean? India is at the G20 today with confidence that it is a country that managed to keep its own people safe despite global developments and needs no Western world pressure to dictate terms to it. Because India's participation this time in food and energy security, digital transformation, health and global economy will have enough examples for us to quote, for us to boast and for the world to learn. Let's take a look at the theme. Because for Indonesia it was recover together, recover stronger. The world is recovering from a pandemic and witnessing an ongoing war. For India, the theme for our presidency is derived from our ancient culture. Vasudeva Kutumbakam, a Sanskrit phrase in the Maha Upanishad that means the world is one family. And what better theme in a globalized world as of today? Prime Minister Modi released the G20 logo that draws inspiration from the colors of our Indian national flag, saffron, white, green and blue. And according to an official statement, it contrasts planet Earth with the lotus, which is also India's national flower, representing growth in the face of hardship that India has clearly shown. Did you notice how lately the US President Joseph Biden is interacting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi? This also on the sidelines interacting with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, French President Emmanuel Macron and several other global leaders. Quoting the World War II and its consequences and its havoc, the Prime Minister said, "Return to the path of diplomacy and a ceasefire in Ukraine," similar to the independent stand earlier of not the time for war. But this while Russian President Vladimir Putin skipped the summit, as President Joe Biden appears to have said that they would be struggling to be in the same room with him. India has assured that we keep a stable equation with both. As S. Jaishankar visited Russia, Prime Minister Modi met Biden in Bali. But West and Russia, remember this time, have refused to share the table in G20. The question is, can India next year bring this mini world to the talking table, and how interesting would be that? Even India-Indonesia's connect has a lot to share. Indonesia has a majority Muslim population, but in Bali, over 90% people follow Hinduism. Across Bali, Ramayana symbolism is visible, like the gigantic Garuda statues or the massive ancient temples and the engraved history about Lord Ram's life. So for India, G20 in Bali gains that additional significance with religious, cultural, historic connect, specifically with renovations around India that are also on right now. Now let me take you through how it was not exactly always easy for India to stand strong at the G20. In November 2015, a wrong map of India was shown to all G20 leaders in which Jammu and Kashmir was shown in Pakistan, prompting a strong protest by the Foreign Secretary Sujata Singh and in turn receiving an apology. In June 2019, analysts revealed that India, South Africa and Indonesia even boycotted the Osaka track on digital economy at the summit because it appeared to overtly undermine policy space to developing countries. In October 2020, India had to launch another protest over distortion of the Indian map by Saudi Arabia, which excluded undivided Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh from India, and in its global map imprinted on the 20 Rial banknote released to mark the kingdom presidency. The lesson? India has had to constantly battle for space among the superpowers, and the world is now taking note of its confidence and that it's leading by example. As I conclude, remember this. G20 is like a mini world on one stage. As India takes over the G20 presidency, India also faces an enormous challenge to make the group inclusive, lead on climate funding, food security, energy security, and as it appears now, the holy land of Buddha and Gandhi can just convey a strong message of peace to the world. And that could be the real theme from India for 2023. Because it is indeed our turn. The onus does lie on our shoulders to craft a new world order for the post-COVID era. Thank you for watching.